Before we go into the podcast, I want to just talk about a business that I've set up with my friend George. It is called the Podcast Introduction Group. So if you want to join and be able to be featured on 24 to 48 podcasts to be able to reach an amazing audience, this is the place you need to go to. Podcast, being a guest on podcasts, is automatically establishing you as an authority and is able to build your personal and professional brand. We handpick of a bank of podcasters that we have to be able to grow your business and brand. We do 100% of everything that needs to be done by my team. You do not need to lift a finger. You are able to expose yourself to new and relevant markets by going on other people's podcasts. You also are able to create brand loyalty. People will love listening to you and coming back to your products or services, and it's able to increase your revenue. So if you want to be able to get involved, you can sign up quickly, registered with an account manager. There's an onboarding call where we target the podcasts that you want to be on, the type that you want, whether it's entrepreneurship, business, health, fitness, whatever it is. We then match you to those podcasts and you can start your journey. We have regular catch-ups with our account managers, and Google ranks you when people search for you. So when people are searching for you, you're able to see your podcasts at the top of the list. So if you're interested in being a podcast guest on multiple podcasts, we are the place to go. If you go to podcastintroduction.com and go and register your details, we will have a quick call with you, match your podcast that you want to be on, and we can then start this process ASAP. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Back onto the podcast then. Just one last thing before we go into the podcast. I just wanted to talk to you about the fact that I have a YouTube channel that has been going for quite some time, and I am recording and releasing all of my interviews with some short videos as well on YouTube. So please do check it out. YouTube on Absolute Business Mindset. You'll see a bunch of interviews there, all the longer format interviews and some short videos as well. So please enjoy that. And here goes with the podcast interview. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and people in their careers. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. Get ready to learn from other successes and failures. Today we have Mark Willis, who is a certified financial planner. Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on, Mark.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. We're going to have a lot of fun here. Right, going into the first question, which I'm now asking all of my guests. The podcast is called Absolute Business Mindset. What does business mindset mean to you?
Well, I believe that the business of your mind is probably the most important thing that you do all day long. In fact, it doesn't matter what your business card says or what you have on your LinkedIn profile. What's mattering most, I think, is what it's making of you to go through the process of being a business owner or a business partner. Because at the end of life, it's not what you've accumulated. Even though I'm a certified financial planner, and sure, we're going to talk about financial strategies and so forth, it's what it makes of you that really matters. It's not what you make in life, it's what it makes of you that really matters. And so what is it helping you become? Your business. What is it allowing you to achieve? Who is it making as you make your business? So I know it's a little bit of a scuba diving answer there, a little deep for the very start of the episode, but I truly believe the biggest adventure of life as an adult, we don't have maybe castles to conquer like little kids in the sand anymore. We don't have dragons to slay or whatever, but we have this wonderful, joyful adventure called business ownership. That if you take it like a game, like take it like a opportunity for development, then many wonderful things can come as a result. If we see it as more than just, points on the board, dollars or, pounds in the bank, and given that outcome of what is it making of you, you'll make a great life, no matter what the results of your business.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's one of the best answers I've ever had for that question. So thank you. Jumping into your first job, you did a sales job as your very first role. What did you learn from that role?
Sales, well, I'll share that it was at first just a really, I think sales is something that every role is. At the end of the day, we're all in sales, no matter what the job title. You're selling your boss to keep your job at the hamburger shop. You're selling your, lemonade on the lemonade stand. So for me, I think you learn a lot about personal development and confidence. You learn the ability to face rejection and overcome that, and to find, value in yourself beyond what maybe other people might say or think about your particular product or service that you're offering. And you just learn the skills of life to maneuver. In fact, I think you relearn them. Children seem to understand sales. My 5-year-old certainly understands sales. And
it's interesting you say that. My 8-year-old understands negotiations better than probably most businessmen on this planet.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. They don't take no for an answer, for sure. And it's just I think a skill set that no matter where you are, if you're listening to this podcast, you're very likely on the path toward business success, and having a concept of sales, negotiation, personal development, it's going to be key to helping you succeed in your business.
Thank you. And before we go into Lake Growth Financial Services, you spent 8 years as a consultant and a coach. Your development as from sales into coaching and consultancy, was that a natural progression? Did you feel like that was a natural path before you went into the financial planning?
Well, yeah, I think many people start from the other side of it, come at it with spreadsheets and data to decide, what Monte Carlo scenario we're going to run to perform the best possible income scenario for one's retirement. That's a perfectly legitimate way to enter into this universe of financial planning, and rightfully so. But any computer can run those simulations. I think what truly brings power is the personal financial planning. Starts with the word personal. So what are the dreams, hopes, goals, desires, concerns, fears of the person sitting across the table from me? We're over Zoom. We meet with folks all over the country and even across the world, and we do it over Zoom mostly. And we're having one-on-one advisory consultations with folks, not just about how their IRA or their 401k or their pension is doing, but about how it's doing for them, and what that's actually making them feel. What are their experiences of the recent world conflict, the recent world pandemic, uncertainty? This does things to marriages. It does things to your parenting. It does things to your waistline and your bottom line. All these things have a impact on your personal life. It's personal financial planning, Mark. And actually, an interesting study came out in California. They did a study on the volatility of the stock market relative to how many people showed up with heart conditions at the hospital. And there was a result that there's a direct correlation. Now, they couldn't put causation in there, but there's a correlation between a 10% drop in the stocks and bonds market and a 35% rise in heart attacks and other heart conditions. Now, isn't that interesting?
It is.
Isn't that interesting? So your health and your wealth are directly related. I would also add that your emotions and your marriage and your personal friendships and your personal view of your self-esteem, when you lose money in the market, you start to say things to yourself. Mm. I had one of my first roles in the financial world was working alongside a CPA, and we were working amidst the 2008 crash. Yep. And mainly my role was to help with tax prep and everything, and to just get the documents ready for the CPA. But I would overhear her make calls, and these calls would include 63-year-olds, 65-year-olds, saying things to them like, "I'm sorry, Mr. Client, I know you saved for 25 years, but I just lost you half your life savings." And that devastates a person. And I almost got out of the industry, because I couldn't handle that kind of weight on my shoulders. Thankfully, we found other strategies that didn't rely on the stock market to, perform in order for goals to be accomplished. But the key piece to it is if your self-worth and your view of yourself is tied to a number on a screen, the Dow Jones or whatever, it's going to be a very fickle, very stressful couple of decades for you.
I'd not heard that sort of research, but it doesn't surprise me that people's health suffers in depressions and recessions. And it sounds to me, when I was doing my research, it sounded to me that that 2008 experience that you had was really a mindset shift for you on what you wanted to do and how you wanted to do it, and the strategies that you were going to use. I know you've touched on it already, but what was that turning point in your mind that changed how you were doing things and why you were doing things in 2008?
Well, I had a really wonderful friend and a former professor come visit me from Texas to Chicago, where I was living at the time. And he asked me a couple of open-ended questions that got me thinking critically about where my money was going and what it was doing. And it's a great, coaching is such a great skill set. And I know you're very skilled and very familiar with the skill set of coaching. One of the words that he taught me as a coach himself was the word eduction. And the word eduction is from Latin to educe, or to draw out what is latent or the potential within. And I think the word potential is a very powerful English word. Potential just means to take and make the most advantage of the asset that you have. And that can be a financial asset, but it can be a personal asset as well. And so what he did in that moment was he helped me sort of understand that there was something inside me that was greater and better than just relying on the average advice of CNN Money and the financial infotainers on the radio and so forth, to tell me to put my money in the stock market, to put it into a tax-deferred 401k, or as I call them, a ticking tax time bomb. There's a long, history, a wonderful history of people asking deep, relevant, and insightful, penetrating questions that activate the potential of another person. And I think that's a really wonderful definition of how coaching has worked for me. And it's now what I try to do with our clients across the country. We just ask deep, hopefully helpful, trust-building, insightful questions that help people find out what they truly want. Because honestly, Mark, I think many people live their entire financial life just following what they've been told. Their money guru told them to get the Roth IRA. Their money guru told them to pay down their mortgage. Their money guru told them to ... But they don't necessarily stop and think, is this what I truly want my money to do for me? And the bold, maybe polarizing opinion here is that not everybody should follow the exact same financial advice that you heard on the radio. And in fact, it could be devastating if you do. And if you follow the herd, you'll get slaughtered. That's a good Texas quote. But if you follow the herd, you will get slaughtered. And we're going to see more volatility in the years ahead. But if you learn to look within and begin to ask deep, penetrating questions, it's great to have a coach, but you can do it yourself. Here's a quick homework, fun little thought exercise. Just grab a paper or grab a journal entry and just start writing out what are the perfect characteristics of money. Like if you could create for yourself the perfect financial vehicle where it would do everything you ever wanted to and ever dreamed it could do for you. If you were totally the boss of your money, what would it be doing for you today? Money's too often the boss of us. It bosses us around. The average American spends a good chunk of their day just paying for debts, just slaves to the bank. That's being slaves to your money. If you were the boss of money, what would it be doing for you? Would it be tax-free when you access the money? Would it be always available to you? Would it be forever growing without fault or without fail? Would it be, private and outside of, courts trying to get access to it? These are things that you could start asking yourself. Don't worry about labels. Don't worry about the names of the money for now. For now, just think wild, think free. What is it you want your money doing for you? These are sort of the questions that we like to try to ask our clients to help coach them and to bring them to an awareness of what is latent or potential within them.
A couple of things are coming from speaking to you. And one is that money is neutral. Money has no ambition. It's the people who own the money that have the desire, the ambition. So if you're a good person and you have money, you'll do good things with money. If you're a bad person with money, you'll do bad things or not for good. So money actually is always neutral, and it's only on the beholder, the person who holds it, that what they do, good or bad. So I totally get that, and I think that's just something I wanted to clarify with people, because it's what other people I've heard speak about, influencers and things, but it is quite important to understand it doesn't define you, money. You define yourself with or without money. The other thing that's springing to mind is, so I have a contrarian view of stocks and shares and investments, and you do the opposite of what everyone else is doing, because it like, for example, if we're in a recession, that's the time to buy shares because they're at their lowest point, and invariably it bounces back. And vice versa. So that for me is something that I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of reading, listening, and that for me, that contrarian view is, and that's what I look for investors. When I created, we have a mechanism to save money tax-free in the UK called ISAs. And that was one of the things that I wanted my ISA to be, a contrarian investor. So is contrarian common sense that no one else uses, or is it the golden nugget which not enough people talk about?
Well, you bring up some great points, and I'll just mention that I totally agree with you that money just makes you more of who you already are. It just accelerates your internal values and puts them on full display for the world. So if you're a great person, you're going to do wonderful things for the world. If you're a jerk and you get money, you're just going to be a great big jerk. So I totally agree with you there. When it comes to contrarian, this is a very difficult conversation, because what kind of contrarian and what is the opposite of a certain action? It's not always buy or sell, for example. So it's really tough to know the future when you're stuck in the present. And just because something is just because the herd is going this direction doesn't mean that there's not a bear trap in the other direction. Maybe there's a cliff over here and a bear trap over there. And so it's really helpful to be discerning about what it is that we're saying no to, and have an affirmative to move toward the direction. Have a purpose statement for whatever action you took. And that's a hard thing to do, because one purpose is to simply look in the opposite direction. But if you just look in the opposite direction, it sometimes can, you can get run over by the crowd, or there might be another, disaster waiting for you over there. So as Niels Bohr used to say, prediction is very difficult, especially when it involves the future, which is all the time. Yes. So the piece to this is having some sort of purpose and underlying desire, personal investment, financial statement for yourself. I'm not talking about like a balance sheet statement. I'm talking about a personal financial purpose sentence or phrase, to say, here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And to start with that why with every choice you make, whether it's to pay off a credit card or to invest in a certain stock or to avoid the stock market altogether, to have that personal purpose money statement. And again, you can do some thought on this, sit down with a coach and talk about this, but it would impact everything from your estate plan to your investing to your overall, what you're going to eat for dinner tonight, right? If you're gonna eat out or going to make your own food. So an example of this, and this doesn't have to be everyone's, but I heard in one conversation, a financial purpose statement might be something like abundant time, energy, and attention for mostly my family. So abundant time, energy, attention for family, mainly outside, serving community. That's a financial purpose statement. So abundant time, energy, and attention with my family, mainly outside, serving community. Couldn't you build a investment diagnosis around that? If you invested in a stock that didn't point you toward that direction of abundant time, energy, and attention with your family, mainly outside, serving community, you'd be able to kind of backpedal a little bit and think about what it is that you need to put your money toward. So that's kind of, again, vague because I can't give direct investment advice on the podcast, but I totally agree with you that having looking for when the investing most when blood's in the streets, as they used to say, can really help put you in the right frame of mind to get out of the herd mentality and to think carefully about where your money should be going, thinking directly about like what is important about this decision I'm making and making that decision with purpose.
That was the word you got the word I was going to use, purpose. That's I've never thought of an investment strategy to be purposeful in that type of way. That's really an interesting explanation. So just to give you, so thank you for that. Just to give you a sort of wider context, talk me through all of the areas that Lake Growth Financial Services covers. We've talked about investment, we've talked about retirement, but what are the other areas that you are involved in?
Well, Lake Growth Financial Services is a financial firm that covers the soup to nuts, what we're looking for, what many of our clients are looking for in their financial life. First of all, we protect your money. We grow your money. We help ensure that your money is tax efficient. We make sure that the money is available, not just locked up, but available for all the goals in your life, both now and in the future. And we make sure that that money and your wealth is passed on favorably to people you care about. And we don't just prepare money for your beneficiaries and your heirs, but we prepare the beneficiaries and your heirs for the money. And we want to make sure that they're not just, silver spoon rich kids that are going to blow it, but we're trying to help learn to communicate between the previous generation and the new generation. There's the old phrase, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Mark, you may have heard that phrase.
Yeah.
In Italy, they say stalls to stalls again.
Yeah.
And it's so universal that there's a colloquial phrase for this same concept in about a dozen different cultures. And it's the idea that we cannot seem to get past the business owner, the founder, the visionary, the wealth creator is passing his or her wealth on to the manager, the maintainer, and then the grandchild is the spendthrift, and back down to poverty we go. Now, part of our goal, again, is to grow, protect, make tax efficient, make accessible all of your cash for all the goals and needs you have in life, and then finally to pass that money on, that wealth on, to the next generation without it getting blown.
So how do you pass that knowledge on? Do you provide a service of education for that next generation? How do you it's a very interesting concept. That's not something financial planners often delve into. A lot of the protection and tax efficiency, that's all rings true on people I know and networking and people on my podcast. But how do you pass that knowledge on? How do you educate that next generation?
I think, again, it started with the coaching question you asked earlier. We can talk about, charitable remainder trusts and fairly sophisticated dynastic, trusts. We can talk about life insurance. We can talk about rollover strategies, real estate and step-up basis strategies that we do with clients over the phone and over Zoom. But it also comes down to what is it that the Hayward family truly stands for? Or in your listener's case, what does your wealth mean for you and your family? We've had folks sit down in a room. We've done this virtually over Zoom. We've done this over a dinner table as well. And we sit down and have conversations with the client where the mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, the matriarch, patriarch of the whole family sits down and says, kids, I never want to see you borrow money for a car or, a student loan ever again. You come to the bank of mom and dad, and here's what it means to be a Hayward. Here's what it means to be a Willis. Here's what it means to be fill in the blank. And some families have even made little dinner mats where they eat every night, and their last name is spelled on the dinner mat. And for every letter of your last name stands for a value or a principle that you truly stand for, that you believe in. So Hayward, each letter of your last name would be corresponding to, health might be the H, for example. A might be accumulation or affirmative, or, you'd get to decide what those values meant for you. And then you bring that into the conversation. There's a big study of over 2,500 ultra high net worth individuals. And and they did a study on the reasons why wealth wasn't being passed on to the next generation. And 70% of families are not able to get it to the next generation of the ultra high net worth. 70%. Of that 70%, 60% of the problem, in other words, 60% of that overall 70% failure rate, was coming from a lack of communication. The parents didn't trust that the kids could handle the information about this massive amount of wealth they're about to receive. So there was no communication of values or even an awareness. Kids might realize that their moms and dads are wealthy, but they don't know what it means or what that is going to do for them. And they usually find out when the will is being read. And typically, what do you do when you get 10 million bucks or 100 million bucks? You blow it on flat screens and Maseratis and, whatever, private islands, whatever. And at the end of the day, was it all worth it? The sweat, the blood, the tears of the founders, the mom and dads, was it worth it just to see it blown? And some unfortunate children actually take their lives as a result of receiving that kind of an inheritance. So I think it really does matter, the communication that you bring. And so what we try to do is we have Zoom meetings. We get the whole family together over Zoom, and we have a discussion about values and what the wealth has meant to mom and dad and what it's going to be for the beneficiaries. And the beneficiaries are aware of and ready for their responsibility. If they're going to be the medical power of attorney for mom or dad, they need to know what mom and dad's wishes are should they come across a medical event, for example. And these are the sort of conversations we have. It's not the same as how's your mutual fund doing? Less than 5% of wealth is lost due to market volatility. At that point in the ultra high net worth conversation, it's not going to be, unless you follow the next Bernie Madoff or the next Enron or something, you're not going to lose your wealth at that point. The real wealth is lost through lack of communication.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
Thank you. I think that's a really powerful point and something which differentiates you within the market of being able to do that. So I think that's a really valuable service that you provide. Another, I think it's quite a tough question, and it's very can bring in very deep emotions with people. But do you think tax is a moral issue?
Oh, that's a great question. Can you give me just a bit more context to your question?
Well, we had some issues in the UK where people a few years back, some footballers, some soccer players, some celebrities made tax efficient decisions on their money. And there was a huge blow up a few years back where people were deemed to be making bad decisions because they weren't paying the fair amount of tax. Now that's the question that I want. Do you think being tax efficient is actually a question that is actually down to, should I pay the right amount of tax or should I pay the fullest amount of tax? And so what you find when interviewing and when talking to people who are high net worth individuals, they see tax as, I pay as much as I need to, or what is right for me to pay, and I pay no more. But some people feel that actually you should pay the maximum amount of tax and it's your responsibility. So I ask morality in the sense of, should we pay the most amount of tax that we should, or is it not a moral issue and we should just pay the amount of tax that we have to, or it's right to make?
No one is stopping all the people who make that moral argument from sending in more money than they are due. In fact, I typically, anecdotally, I see the people who make that argument are typically getting a tax refund and other subsidies. And the statistics are clear. There's a significant tax need in both of our countries. Both of our countries have we're seeing an aging population, and the old age pensions, like Social Security, are going to require more and more to keep them well funded. And I'd like to know the definition of the word fair or right here as well. In feudal England, a long time ago, you could. I don't want to. You correct me if I'm wrong here. This is your expertise, not mine. But the tax rate from the lords to the serfs was 25%. That's what it meant to be a serf. Was a 25% tax on your harvest, and all your efforts was 25%. Mark, I don't know your financial situation, but would you like to have no more taken from you than just 25%? I'd be okay with that at this point.
It's better than we have at this time.
That's right. Yeah, well, I add my federal, and I live in Illinois, so there's a state tax, and then we got a local tax. Yeah. It can exceed 50, even 60%. And in the grand scheme of things, we are actually in a low tax environment currently right now, in this time that we're talking, relative to the last 100 years in the United States. The marginal brackets top out at about 37%. We've seen them as high as 90% in the 50s. Now, 90% is unbearably high, in my opinion. Yeah. But I still want I still see potholes in the street that need to be filled. I still see teachers that need to be paid and so forth. But I guess I'm curious, does the ultra wealthy, and I'm not speaking for them. I have very, very, I'd say just your average Joes and not so average Joes that work with us, people who are not making a ton and are just trying to figure out how to help their kids go to college and so forth, just paying the bills and so forth. And we've got very high, very, wealthy folks working for us all the same. And what I notice is there's a reason why they got so wealthy. And like I see a lot of people downplaying the guys like your Jeff Bezos and such, like, hey, how come he hasn't paid 100% of his taxes and so forth? And again, I'm not going to play too much on morality, but what I am surprised by is how much I use Amazon and how much of a social benefit that has been for me in the midst of everything else. So can we agree that sometimes paying your taxes is just kind of the lowest common denominator for your contribution to society? For example, you get a ton of tax breaks when you're doing real estate investing in the United States, maybe in the UK as well. And I'm struck by how the real estate investing is doing what the government would have had to have done anyway. But when we align ourselves with the interests of the government, i.e. give housing to people, when we do what the government was going to have to do anyway, the government's willing to give us a break on our taxes. So if we dance to the government song, if we play their game, we should be able to get deductions. And that's what the wealthy are doing. And that's what the average person, you and I maybe, didn't get taught as a kid growing up. I didn't get taught that if I invest in real estate, if I contribute and start a business, if I employ people, government wants jobs, government wants housing. And if they're not going to do it, if it's not going to be a center-run kind of government-run economy, but it's going to be a private economy, then they should incentivize the people who are contributing to their ends, housing, jobs, etc., in the way of tax deductions. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox. I don't play the morality card too much, but just think about what is the end goal of the government's taxation. And I'll just lastly ramble on with this, and I'll keep it brief. Why do they need our taxes? I don't know about the UK, but the government in the United States can print endless amounts of money. So why do they need to collect taxes in the first place? If they can just make they can't make infinite, trees. They can't make infinite amounts of oil. They can't make infinite amounts of gold, but they can print infinite amounts of money, Mark. Why do they even tax us at all? Here's my answer. Here's my guess. This is way above my pay grade, but it's manipulation. And that's a negative word. But again, they want to incentivize us to build housing, to create businesses that produce jobs. And so taxation is a form of social control. That's another negative word. but it's also a means by which you can play their game and have a tremendous tax break and be efficient. I don't know anyone who doesn't want to be efficient with their money. If you would like to pay more in taxes, give me a call. I've got a tax bill coming up, and I would be glad to take your donations at this time.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That's a good explanation. So a lot of my listeners, including myself, is an entrepreneur. And so when I was doing some research, a phrase came up. I want you just to expand on that. And you say, how can an entrepreneur fire the bank or banker and become their own source of financing? Can you explain what you mean by that statement?
Well, we have, I know I've already rambled quite a bit, but I think this is such a huge part of your financial life. So I have to expound on this a bit. Banking is a verb. Banks are nouns. So banks are the problem. Banking is the solution. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Now, there's a book out by David Graeber. It's called Debt, the First 5,000 Years. 5,000 years. That's an incredible subtitle right there.
Yeah.
And it goes to show that banking is a core function of the human experience. It's as old as friendship. It's as old as parenting, apparently. Banking is going to be around long after the iPhone, long after smartphones and everything. It's going to be around until humans are gone, basically. So we have to ask ourselves, how are we participating in the banking process? Because I don't care if your business is selling bananas on the side of the road, or if your business is, selling cars or whatever, or running a very complex service industry. You are in the banking business regardless. So the question really is, who's sitting behind the banker's desk? Is it you, or is it some banker? And I would suppose that whoever is sitting behind the banker's desk in your life is going to win the money game. It matters more who the banker is than what you got on your investments last quarter. It matters more than what your interest rate is on your mortgage. What matters most is who's controlling the banking function in your life. If banks are controlling the banking function, they're going to win. It's like the environment that the fish is swimming in. If I have a little fish, my daughter and I are trying to keep this little fish alive out there, and we get to control the environment. We get to add certain, elements to control the acidity of the water, the temperature, the lighting. We clean the fish tank. If we wanted to, we could certainly make that life for that little fish miserable or wonderful, depending. We control it. And banks are certainly the ones that control the dials on our financial life. So what if you could become your own source of financing? What if you could become your own banker, fire your banker, and take back control of the banking function in your family's life or your business's life? We have a lot of clients that are business owners, and a lot of them have to buy large equipment. We have a foot doctor, a podiatrist that needs large equipment purchases and x-rays and so forth to be able to handle his business. Rather than using a line of credit at the bank, which can be taken away from him, he uses his own line of credit for himself, borrows against himself, pays himself an interest rate, and he's able to be profitable from the business in more ways than one. Not just taking client, patient money and so forth and being profitable in that regard, but by paying himself an interest, he's actually paying himself as a debtor to a creditor in a way that allows him to control the entire environment where his money lives and where his business lives. He was going to have to buy that x-ray machine anyway. So why not borrow it from himself and pay himself that interest rate? Now, there's some specific strategies on how we do that, but that's the overall concept, Mark.
Fascinating. I've not heard of that as well. I've heard of people are doing it with their pension funds in the UK. They're actually creating their own bank as such and lending the money to buy real estate and various other sort of business opportunities. So yeah, that's a very interesting point. Okay. What do you see in yourself and your business in the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, what if just 10% of Americans or Londoners or folks in your neck of the woods, wherever you're listening to this, what if just 10% were able to fire their banker and become their own source of financing? They were able to cut out all the credit cards, the finance companies, the mortgages, and pay themselves the interest that they were currently throwing out the door. What would that do? What would that do to our nation's divorce rate, to our nation's suicide rate? What would it do to our nation's capacity to meet its financial obligations? If you were not in debt up to your eyeballs, if the 10% of Americans or folks in your neck of the woods are free financially, I'd love to see what that would do. And now that's not going to just come from me and myself alone. Certainly not. I'm a part of a organization called Bank on Yourself, which is about 200 financial professionals around the country and Canada that are working toward helping people become their own source of financing. And I've truly become convinced that, again, who controls the banking lever in your life is going to be the one that determines the outcome. And me, along with several hundred other advisors, are helping this happen, where we're helping people family by family become not only debt-free, but better than debt-free, to become the bank. So that's what I see happening, continuing to pursue that revolution, one family, one person at a time.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, we're coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick-fire questions. They don't need a quick-fire answer. They're often being described as being thought-provoking. So do with it what you will. First question is, what's the best decision that you made?
Well, I think having a moment when my professor and friend asked me, Mark, is it possible that Dave Ramsey could be wrong about something? Dave Ramsey is a radio host who seems to know everything, or shows himself to know everything. But my friend and colleague, he gave me a question that cracked open my closed mind. And I guess as far as best financial decision, that would be it. As far as overall decision, my wife is sitting just upstairs, so I'd say that's got to be one of them. She helps push me toward a better version of myself every day. So hopefully we'll keep that journey up.
Fantastic. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Oh man, I think the one of the best pieces of advice has been the commitment to just self-improvement. Somebody once said, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And that to me has been at least one of the best pieces of advice, to work harder on yourself than you do on your job.
Excellent. Who's helped you most in your career?
There's several. I mean, people I attribute the changing of our family tree to a wonderful, amazing woman named Pamela Yellen. She wrote the book, Bank on Yourself Revolution. So I recommend folks check that book out. It's a New York Times bestselling book. She's become a great friend and colleague. There's too many people to count, Mark, as you know, but just the few people that come to my mind include her as far as a career decision, for sure.
Do you have any regrets?
Well, I think the thing I'd like on my tombstone is he was getting better at this. I think that'd be a great thing to say. He was getting better at this. But as far as regrets go, it's not so much like what you did do that I think create regret. I think it's what you left undone that create the most regret, according to some research on this. And this is something that I'm still pursuing. But I really think it's the things that we know we should do, but choose not to do. We push away our conscience and decide not to call that person that we need to forgive, or decide not to pursue that personal dream that we've always wanted to do. I think over the last 2 years, we've all had a few maybe vacations taken from our itineraries. So, I think part of that is just, hey, can we take a chance and do what we, only have so much time on this side of heaven to do? We might as well go take the most of it and create the most potential. I think that's to wrap this one up. The word potential, again, is a very important word for me. And it's great when you're a young kid. Oh man, Mark Hayward, he's got such potential. But it's not so great when I might have it on my tombstone. Oh man, Mark had such potential. So you really want to activate your potential to avoid the regrets. Figure out what your potential is and then avoid those regrets.
Amazing. Thank you. What are you most proud of?
I think, again, it's hard to pull it down to like what I'm most proud of. But one of the things I'm most proud of certainly is what I see happening in the life and heart and mind of my little daughter. It's so cool to see, the blend of values that we're trying to instill in her, along with an awareness of my money. When I was a 5-year-old, basically I had my money in a paper bag, and I wasn't going to let go of that thing, for whatever. My mom actually took me to a bank to open up a bank account, and I was concerned about giving all of my life savings to this total stranger. Little did I know how probably right on that 5-year-old's concern was as far as the safety of your money in a bank account.
Yeah.
What I've learned lately about that. But, I think one thing that I would say most proud of is what my wife is doing to help raise and train my daughter, what I'm trying to do, failingly, of course, seeing how she's able to sort of comprehend things, and hopefully give her the best shot toward the future. I mean, that's what we can all hope to do as parents.
Yeah. And what does legacy mean to you?
Wow. These are thought-provoking questions. I'd say it's not just about preparing the money for the people. It's about preparing the people for the money. And yes, we want to stockpile whatever, but at the same time, I don't need to forego the vacation or the country club or the sports car, just so I can die and then give it to my kids so they can go get the vacation, the country club, and the sports car. Let's die with zero if we can help it. That'd be amazing to be able to do that, because during your lifetime, you gave it all away, not because you spent it on frivolous stuff, but you got to see the mission you had in life actualized. Man, what a cool way to live a legacy, and then to point to your children or favorite charities toward the legacy that you want to get them to themselves.
What do you have? Do you have the sports car? Do you have the vacations, or do you have the country club?
Well, I think if I had to pick one, man, the experiences of the vacations would be my favorite. But because I think at the end of life, and I think it was actually a Downton Abbey character that said this, the butler, I forget his name, but he said life is just the accumulation of memories, and I think that's a great way to sort of do what you can while you have the time here, and then to do it with people you love and watch what they do with it. Take it from there.
And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
We have a podcast ourselves. If you love listening, Not Your Average Financial Podcast. We went a little deeper than your average bear here today, Mark. So, forgive me, guys, for bringing the scuba gear. Most of our episodes get into some tactical strategies for financial planning, but we do believe in the person behind the money as well. So go to Not Your Average Financial Podcast. That's notyouraveragefinancialpodcast.com.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's so fascinating to speak to someone who you're obviously a deep thinker and a very moral person, and having your view on that whole purpose of your money has really rung true to me. So I've learned something today. So thank you very much for your time.
And a great question asker. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your time.
Yes.